The moon hung over the narrow sea like a half-cooled coin, its wan sheen frosted by cloud and sea spray. Beneath it, a single-masted cog hove in the slow swells, her patched sail breathing in soft, exhausted sighs. On her forecastle rail leaned a woman who called herself Lysa of Lys, though Lysa was only a name borrowed for convenience, and Lys was a city she had left behind so many faces ago. Wind worried at the red shawl she wore, teasing a fringe of burnished hair across cheeks that seemed aglow, even in the chill dark, as though an ember banked beneath parchment skin. Her gaze never strayed from the looming silhouette to the west, Dragonstone, jag-toothed and brooding, a fortress carved into the likeness of old Valeria's dread. Each stroke of oar or yaw of rudder drew her nearer to its cavernous mouth. She tasted ash on the air before she saw the volcanic glow flickering faintly in windows chiseled like dragon eyes. And she knew the island greeted her, not with warmth, but with a challenge whispered in smoke and salt. She let her fingers uncurl from the rail, feeling splinters snag soft flesh, drawing thin beads of blood that glimmered black under moonlight. Pain centered her. It reminded her that flesh was real, temptingly mortal, and that the guise she wore presently, pale-faced Lysa, a minor red acolyte come east in search of a new temple, must bleed and bruise and flinch properly if anyone peered too closely. The faceless god demanded perfection in illusion, yet the red priests of Aurelor trafficked in spectacle, and tonight she must walk a blade-fine line between the two creeds. Somewhere in the labyrinth beneath Dragonstone's ancient stone, secrets older than Aegon's conquest slept in dust and shadow. Secrets the kindly man in Bravos yearned to price. Secrets she herself wished to taste, perhaps even keep. For molten desire had seeped into her over years, hotter than any forge, and sometimes she suspected the fires she called up in prayer answered not to Aurelor alone, but to something unnameable that burned even deeper. An oar grated against rough stone. A sailor muttered a curse. The cog's hull kissed the landing quay with a hollow knock, and rope snaked out through damp fingers. Lysa gathered her cloak, allowed the wind to billow it just so, dramatic but not ostentatious, and stepped down onto Dragonstone. The dock captain, one Sir Barrett Sunglass, offered a curt bow. He carried himself like a man abruptly promoted beyond what his sinews understood. Dragonstone had changed hands twice in half a year, and the men who remained wore their newfound allegiance like ill-tailored mail. "You'll be wanting quarters," he said, squinting at the sigil sewn near her throat. A flaming heart crimson on saffron. "The Lord expects a priestess, though he reckoned you might come by road, not sea." "I go where the Lord of Light's winds blow," she replied, voice soft as hot wax. She did not employ a shadowbinder's glamour tonight. There was power in restraint, and they blew swiftly. "Sailors said you kept no lanterns lit," Sir Barrett observed. "Flames burn brightest in the mind," she answered, and brushed past him before curiosity lodged further. Behind her the sailors heaved barrels ashore. Salt fish, pickled cod, casks of Dornish sour red. Dragonstone's larders yawned lean these days, and each clunk of a cask was a herald of looming siege. She felt the castle's hunger like an echo in her own bones. Famine sharpens appetites, the kindly man once warned. On nights when Bravos sank into fog, he spoke of men whose bellies emptied until every whisper of coin rang louder than conscience, of girls who bartered faces for crusts of bread. Hunger could carve a soul faster than any dagger. If Dragonstone starved, desperation would season its secrets, making them ripen for plucking. A pair of household guards escorted her through the sea gate and up a switchback stair, hewn through volcanic glass. The path was lit by torches guttering in iron sconces, spit hissing in the stiff wind. Stone dragons, weather-gnawed, reared overhead at intervals, as though to swallow intruders whole. Lysa's heart measured their passage with calm drumbeats. She counted steps. 42 to the first landing, 91 more to a narrow bridge, and catalogued arrow slits, murder holes, and collapsing crenellations in need of mortar. The training of the Faceless men had not left her for all the red silks draped across her body. Every stone that surrounded her was another potential hiding place, another vantage, another vault to rifle in moonless hours. At length they reached a covered walkway, whose shuttered windows rattled like angry teeth. The keep beyond rose high and black, studded in obsidian ribs that drank torchlight. She was ushered through a door banded in bronze. Warmth rushed at her from braziers lining the walls of a circular hall, though their coal beds glowed sullen and meager. On a dais at the far end stood a massive table shaped in the likeness of Westeros. The painted table she knew, though she feigned awe to match Lysa's supposed ignorance. Around it hunched half a dozen men in dark cloaks, and one tall woman in patched leather, her cropped hair the silver gray of winter beeches. Lady Celis Florent. Their voices dulled to silence as Lysa entered. Lord Stannis Baratheon's face was flintwork above a thick brown beard, sprouting new flecks of iron. He regarded her with the same severity he brought to siege calculations and sums of grain. "You are the priestess?" he asked, each word sanded of courtesy. "I am but a servant of the Lord of Light," she said, sinking to one knee. Kneeling chafed her. An assassin kneels only long enough to strike, but the role demanded deference. "Humble though I be, his flame guides my feet to your threshold, my lord." Celeste's thin lips curved in brittle satisfaction. "The night is dark and full of terrors," she intoned, as though tasting a secret she'd waited weeks to utter. "And yet fires burn." Lysa finished the catechism, rising. She watched Stannis' face, a tick at the jaw, a scathing plea that this not devolve into mummery. Dragons carved into black chair legs grimaced behind him. A cool tremor passed through her scalp, and she wondered whether one of those stone beasts hid a hinge for a secret passage. Dragonstone thrummed with forgotten doors. "Lord Hightower dispatches, envoys weekly," Stannis said, pinching the bridge of his nose. "They prattle of peace. I have no use for prattle. If your god grants victory, then speak. If not, we waste coals." "All victories begin unseen," she answered. "Roar shows his servants first the tinder, then the flame." The line belonged to a Braavosi play she once watched through another's eyes. It sounded suitably prophetic here. "Give me one night's grace. Let me tend your fires, and perhaps they will speak." Stannis considered, then gave a tight nod. Davos Seaworth leaned close to his lord's ear, voice low. Lysa caught only fragments. Winter stores, morale, storm's end, risk in indulging foreign magics. She drank his caution like wine. Davos smelled of harbor brine and old onions, honest to fault. Honesty made men predictable. She folded the shape of him into memory. A narrow chamber overlooking the eastern cliffs was granted her, sparse save for a pallet, a three-legged stool, and a brazier with more ash than coal. Once the guards withdrew, she stripped into linen shift and surveyed the room. Cracks webbed the walls. Sulfur and salt clung to stone like mildew. Beneath the pallet, she spotted a spy hole drilled cunningly at knee height. Some steward's crude attempt at vigilance. She smiled, imagining a wide eye pressed to the aperture. Let them watch. They would see only what she wished. She drew a pouch from within her robe, a tight silk purse cinched by catgut. Inside lay a rough-hewn face fashioned of leather, stretched over willow splints. The last she had worn before boarding the cog at Driftmark. She studied its inert features, neither pretty nor plain, merely common. The memory of living behind that face twitched in her muscles. Her own reflection, if she had one anymore, was lost somewhere amid a gallery of selves. Setting the mask gently atop the stool, she withdrew a second token. A sliver of polished obsidian the length of a finger, edges wicked sharp. This had come from the kindly man's keeping, alone and trusted only to those on holy errands. She closed her hand around its glassy heft until blood welled anew from earlier splinters. Sharper wounds, she thought, would follow. With methodical movements she built a small fire in the brazier. Lamb tallow, a scrap of salt-dried pine, a whisper of sulfur scraped from the walls. She breathed into the ember until it woke in crimson sparks. Flames licked high, convulsing like eels in oil. She let her eyes unfocus, staring into the bleeding heart of orange and blue. Mother of flame, father of shadows, she murmured, merging Erlor's prayer with the nameless tongue taught beneath Braavos' murdered statues. Memory answered, heat under skin, breath quickening, the sense of doors opening inside her skull. Faces stirred in the smoke. Some she had worn, others merely glimpsed in passing crowds, blurring until a new visage coalesced, fair-haired, finely-boned, with brows soft as sable quills. A Taroshi girl, perhaps, or a young maid from the Reach. Not yet perfect. She fed another shred of tallow to the fire, and the brow sharpened, nostrils flared. Better. She could don that face tomorrow if need arose. For now, she whistled once, sharp, a note too high for most ears. A shape shifted in the rafters, a raven docked of half its tail feathers. Glossy black, gone ragged gray. It hopped down, landing on the stool beside the leather mask, and fixed her with a beady red-ringed eye. Soon, she told it, and the bird cawed, sound crackling like cold pine on coals. She had bought the raven in the alleys behind the ragmen's harbor, training it with husks of fried eel, until it knew her whistle. The castle possessed rookery ravens aplenty, but a private courier served purposes beyond polite letters. Secrets rarely rode official wings. Sleep came fitful. The bedstraw crackled with lice. Wind screamed through shutters and rattled the brazier chain so that it clanged like a smith's hammer. Yet she dreamed, as the red priests claimed all true servants did, and her dream was drenched in living flame. A colossal dragon writhed across a crimson sky, scales dripping molten gold. Where its eyes should gleam there gaped emptiness, pits devouring light. From those pits bloomed 100 balefire flowers, each petal a different face she had worn. Maids, sailors, thieves, a charwoman in Gulltown, a silent sister outside King's Landing. They opened their mouths to speak, but only fire spilled out, and the dragon drank it greedily, swelling until its body cracked the heavens. Awaking before dawn, she tasted smoke, but the brazier was cold. She lay still, heartbeat drumming, and wondered whether prophecy belonged to gods alone, or whether a mortal who collected faces might craft twisted prophecies of her own. Gray daylight seeped into the chamber. A knock came presently, and a boy with windred ears set a basin of tepid water inside. She bathed swiftly, scrubbing away the scent of tar and bilge, covering splinter cuts with drops of pine sap. An antiseptic caught in the house of black and white. She slipped into a crimson gown whose fabric clung at wrists and throat, but fell loose at hip, the better to conceal blades or vials. The bodice embroidered with tongues of fire had cost her a purse of Bravosi silver. Appearances demanded tribute. Over this she threw a heavier mantle of boiled leather tinted darkest wine, and around her neck hung a carved ruby. Its heart-blood glimmer had once belonged to a Lycene courtesan who died in her arms, though not from any cause visible. Things passed easily between hand and mouth when one paid the price. Down 2 flights she found the great hall, vaulted ceiling, held aloft by stone dragons grappling like lovers. Servants laid out trenchers of oat porridge, gray and unappetizing. Knights and squires ate in wary silence, their minds on ships massing in Blackwater Bay, or on rumors of Tyrell grain fleets slipping blockade. As she passed, whispers rippled. Red women were rare in Westeros still. Faces turned to mark her, but she kept her gaze distant, as though listening to a voice none could hear. A priestess must carry quiet thunder. At tables, End Maester Crescent rose, leaning on a polished ash cane. His white fringe trembled above watery blue eyes. Lady Lysa, was it? Might an old man impose upon your mourning? A priestess cannot deny those in need, she said. He led her to an alcove where bright tapestries once hung, now riddled by moths. Crescent's thin hands worked the cane. Lord Stannis is beset by false counselors, he began. If you harbor influence, wield it wisely. Our garrison starves, our coffers rattle like empty helmets. Lord Stannis sees only rebellions, arithmetic. He thinks you will conjure victory. I fear other conjurations. Lysa lowered lashes, painting remorse. I wield no power save to interpret flame, even king's heir when reading smoke. Crescent frowned. A fine answer, yet I sent Bravos on your tongue. Bravosi worship their own gods. Why cross seas to spread eastern fire? Because I wear 10 tongues, old man, she thought. Out loud she offered a softer truth. Many gods, one light. The face matters less than the fire beneath. Dragonstone's halls remember Valeria's kiss. They hunger for flame. I follow hunger. Nemnasai. His gaze sharpened. Perhaps he glimpsed something beneath her words, or perhaps the tremor in his hands betrayed his trust in senses gone dull. He bowed regardless, a brittle reed in winter wind. May our Lord find in you the counsel he requires then. She left him studying her retreat as though yearning to lift the mask from her skin. This pleased her. Suspicion bred caution, caution bred error, and errors nourished the faceless god. Through narrow corridors she traced the scent of soot, until she reached the chamber where blacksmiths labored over chains and arrowheads. Their forges glowed cherry red. Hammers sang. She stood in the doorway, letting heat wash her loneliness. Fire is a language, she mused. One must learn its verbs, its tenses, its moods. She read the flicker of bellows as lungs, the spatter of sparks as laughter. Somewhere in those tongues lay the secret of waking stone dragons, if indeed tales were true. What value might the kindly man place upon a spell that gave breath to stone? And what might she herself do with such lore, should it slip unexpectedly into her palm? A sudden guffaw drew her glance. A ringmail apprentice teasing a smaller boy with glowing tongs. Flesh burned white before blackening, but she inhaled, tasting iron. Pain throve in Dragonstone's bowels, pain and fervor. They were siblings. She turned away before they noticed her watching, continuing deeper, into the castle. Past the forges lay the shadow tunnel, a corridor winding so close to the sea that waves boomed through fissures, exhaling spray onto basalt walls. Torches burned low here. Most folk avoided the damp. She padded silently, cloak drawn tight. Her raven fluttered above, having slipped its wicker cage, and now spiraled overhead, feathers shedding droplets. The tunnel forked. Instinct tugged left. She followed until footfall echoed differently, stone replaced by metal. Looking down she saw a grate no wider than a man's shoulders, crusted in salt. Through its lattice the sea foamed and withdrew, as though tasting the castle's belly. She knelt, fingering corroded bars. They were ancient wrought iron, if iron at all. Certain runes etched their length, Illyrian glyphs. Few alive could read them, but she recognized fragments from scrolls in Bravo's secret library. Here was dragon, here blood, here song. Secrets indeed nested in Dragonstone's guts. Voices drifted. She rose, smoothing skirts. 3 men in gambesons rounded a bend, torchbearers escorting a knight whose tabard bore the crowned stag within fiery heart. Sigil brand new to Stannis. They halted upon seeing her, the knight's brows lifted. "My lady," he said, "you tread a lonely passage." "Truth often walks alone," she answered. "Does it disturb you?" "Not disturb, surprise." He tapped his breastplate. Ser Gunser's sunglass. "If you seek the sept, it lies sunward, not seawards. I seek only knowledge." She brushed fingers along the rune inlay until salt grit sparkled under torchlight. Dragonstone's builders left riddles enough to fill a lifetime. "Tell me, Sir Gunser, has no maester tried to solve them?" "Maesters pry at scraps while lords weigh grain," Gunser said, leaning close as though confiding. "And this old fortress gives answers in tongues long dead. Yet tongues can be taught." She let her gaze linger on the torch, allowing Ruby at her neck to catch firelight and throw blood-hued shimmer across Gunser's jaw. His eyes dilated. She felt the subtle tug, Byre's hypnotic cadence entering him. "Would you walk with me another time, sir?" A mind unafraid of darkness makes a worthy companion. He swallowed. "If the Lord permits." "I will ask," she said, though she had no intention of asking. She would find him when required. She drifted away before torch smoke could drown the moment's spell. That night Stannis summoned her to the painted table. The others had withdrawn. Only him and Lady Selise remained. Braziers smoked fitfully, filling the chamber with bitters of resin. "The fleet of Lord Redwine has slipped past Old Town," Stannis said without greeting. "Within the moon they will tighten this siege. My brother's ghost throttles me with every raven." He slammed a dagger into the wooden coastline, chipping fingernail-thin flakes from the painted shield islands. You promised flame. I promised only to read. She approached the table's southern reach, fingertips hovering above the tiny dragon jaws painted at Dragonstone's likeness. When she spoke again, it was not in Lysa's voice, nor in the cadence of the House of Black and White, but somewhere between, low, ominous, compelling. Bring me dry driftwood. Bring me leal men to stand guard, and bring me silence, lest the fire be crowded by doubt. Selise pressed a hand upon Stannis' wrist. Motes of ash speckled her sleeves. My lord, let her try. Our cause has need of miracles. Nan. Miracles are tales told by victors, Stannis muttered. But he signaled assent. Hours later the courtyard thronged beneath a moonless sky. Smoke coiled from a pyre built against the windbreak. Twisted driftwood, waked by tar and oily bilge scrapings, crackling alive. Lysa ascended the dais before it. Silhouette stark. Soldiers watched, eyes glittering. Hungry men are easy sponges for belief, she thought. Yet belief born of fear often flees when dawn reveals unburned truths. Care must be taken. She raised her arms. Wind tugged her cloak into storm wings. Flames leapt, and she recited an Eastern hymn whose vowels tasted of blade and belladonna. As she spoke, she worked small sleight of hand. A pinch of wildfire paste hidden beneath thumb smeared across log edges. The substance hissed verdant, then erupted in ghost-green pillars. Gasps rose. Faces bathed in sorcerous glow forgot hunger, fear, and reason. Absorbed wholly by spectacle, she let the wildfire burn scarcely a breath, then flicked dust of salt into its heart. The green sank into ordinary crimson, as though the Lord of Light had subdued some lesser demon. She turned, ruby pulsing at her breast, and told them of shadows cast by traitors in the east, of a king forged in flame, of victory glimpsed just beyond the world's rim. She spoke for minutes that wasted like lifetimes. When at last she fell silent, no one dared applaud. Silence was denser than stone. Afterward, Stannis approached alone, boots crunching charred bark. You made promises again, he said, voice rough. I gave warnings disguised as hope. She replied, Hope is the hardest coin, my lord. Harder than gold, harder than steel. His mouth twisted. Coin by ships. Your hope had best buy me time. Die? It bought tonight's obedience, she pointed out. When men obey, ships follow. He studied her, a flenser measuring kill yield. In that gaze she sensed not lust, nor awe, only calculation. Good. Awe would complicate, lust would corrupt. She required a king whose belief balanced always on tenterhooks, lest he examine her flame too closely. By dawn she returned to her chamber. The spy hole beneath her pallet was vacant, yet a moated scent of cloves lingered, a telltale favored by Bravos smugglers. Someone had watched, then fled. She smiled. Each watcher became another seam in the garment of myth she wove around herself. Pull enough seams, and the garment would unravel, revealing the naked secret beneath, Dragonstone's heart, pulsing in dark. The raven waited on the stool, cocking head. She produced a rolled scrap of parchment, inked earlier with cipher. She tied it with horsehair, secured it to the bird's slender leg. The window latch squealed. Cold air knifed her cheeks. She whispered, Go to Sister's Shoal. A gentle toss, and the raven vanished into dawn's slate haze. When next it returned, a man in a fisher's cap would know he need only row to the leeward cove, where a priestess might purchase silence with rubies or steel. Days blended, stone dripping salt, fires whispering nightly. She explored passage by passage, gift-wrapping suspicions in veils of prayer. She sat with Shireen Baratheon by the seawall, telling stories wherein dragons were torches held by children of the sun. For each tale, she gleaned trifles, keys left carelessly by stewards, habits of guards who dozed through Eighthbell. She dined beside Davos, gleaning maps of smuggler coves from half-spoken recollections. When she knelt in chapel, Lady Sellis pressed an heirloom ring into her palm, urging her to anoint the king's sword lightbringer with holy oils, thus gaining for Lysa the run of the armory. One evening she ventured again to the grate over the sea beneath Shadow Tunnel. A pick worked between corroded runes until iron shrieked and snapped. Heart quickening, she lifted the grate aside. Spray hissed below, foaming over basalt steps leading down into black. She descended, oil lamp guttering, and found a door of fused obsidian hidden behind a curtain of algae. No hinge nor handle marred its surface, but in its center glimmered an indentation shaped exactly like the ruby at her throat. She hesitated. The gem's magic, such as it was, belonged to stagecraft, to subtle illusions of warmth and hue and life. Yet the door might demand more: blood, or truth, or soul. She felt the pull of two masters then, the many-faced god whispering that all doors open to death, and Relor roaring that fire melts every bar. Torn between absolutes, she reached and pressed the ruby to stone. Bloodfire bloomed. The gem burned against her breast, but cold rippled outward into the door, shaping runes in lines of slippery shadow. A breath, a shudder, a crack running top to bottom. Obsidian side open like furnace doors. Beyond lay darkness deeper than night, a stair descending into bowels where no tide reached. Even the air tasted unborn. She stepped across the threshold, oil lamp thrust forward, and the flame elongated, drawn as though by invisible current. The first chamber held shelves of parchment dissolved to lace. The second, racks of torques wrought from blackened steel, some inlaid with tiny dragonglass shards. She plucked one, weighing it, feeling static nibble her fingertips. The third chamber was empty, but for a pedestal carved to resemble a dragon's claw. Upon its talon rested a fluted glass or crystal rod, no longer than a dagger, hollow, and capped by a stopper of dusty bronze. Within the glass swirled viscous liquid the color of shadow, though it reflected light like polished onyx. Beneath the stopper, etched along the rod's neck, writ small Valyrian glyphs she could not wholly decipher. But one word she knew: Zobril, life. Breath stalled in her chest. Here, she sensed, was not merely sorcerous curiosity. Here was a shard of Valyria's forbidden craft. Blood of dragon or king, distilled into immortal slumber. To deliver such a relic to Braavos would earn coin beyond song. To give it to Stannis might buy her seat beside any throne he claimed. To keep it for herself. Ah, that whispered possibilities only flame could voice. She touched the glass. Heat flared, enough to sting. The liquid inside curled like smoke. A whisper stirred behind her. She spun, knife unsheathed. Only darkness sighed. Yet in that sigh, she caught a word almost. She held still, lamp trembling. Had the many-faced god come to claim his due for greed? Or had she blundered into some red priest's sacrament? She strained to listen, but heard only blood drumming behind her eyes. The relic must be hidden soon. She slipped it into a leather cylinder she carried for scrolls, cushioning it with felt torn from her bodice. Donning composure, she retraced her steps. Obsidian door closed with a sound like coals snuffed in snow. She replaced the grate, sanded runes to obscure fresh fracture, and ascended into moon-laced tunnel once more. Back in her chamber she sat cross-legged before the dead brazier. The rod lay before her, an unblinking serpent's eye. She drew the obsidian dagger she kept beneath pillow, and pricked the pad of her thumb, letting a single drop of blood slip onto the glass. It vanished instantly, drawn in. Heat rippled through the room. Shadows danced across walls, shaping faces, some hers, some unknown. She watched, entranced, until the rod cooled again, inert. The droplet of blood. Her blood was gone. A soft knock jarred her. She wrapped the relic in cloth and stowed it under loose floorboard before answering. Davos Seaworth stood there, lantern in hand. Worry carved trenches beside his nose. Maester Cressen's fallen ill, he said. He asked for you. His eyes flicked past her shoulder, as though sensing secrets. She schooled her voice to concern. I will come. Down the passage to Cressen's solar they walked. Davos did not speak. His lantern swung, scattering orange shards across stones. Lysa's mind whirred. If the maester sickened naturally, fortune smiled. But if some silent watcher poisoned him, The timing was thin as a hair. She pictured the spy hole under her palate, the clove scent. She pictured the many paths converging, Stannis' desperation, Celis's zealotry, her own theft. Tension wound tighter. Within the solar crescent lay upon feather mattress, sweat silvering his brow. His sleep was restless, breath blacksmith hot. Lysa touched his wrist, pulse fluttered irregular. A chalice sat on the nightstand, wine barely tasted. She sniffed it, bitter almonds. Sweet sleep. Some called that tincture. Favored by assassins. Panic sizzled under her breastbone. She had not ordered this. The House of Black and White did not strike targets unrequested. Someone else moved pieces on the board. She read Crescent's face. Poison would claim him by dawn unless countered. Lives taken for coin mattered not to her creed. Yet this life might serve her purpose alive. She turned to Davos. "Fetch me milk of the poppy vinegar, salt, and a copper basin." "Hurry." He hesitated, then ran. She lifted Crescent's head, forced 2 fingers down his throat. Thin vomit trickled. Each heartbeat measured risk. Saving him might unlock trust. Letting him die would clear obstacles to Salisa's influence. Yet a corpse could not speak secrets. Davos returned breathless. She mixed vinegar and salt, added poppy just enough to dull pain rather than stupefy. She poured the draught past Crescent's cracked lips, massaging his throat until reflex swallowed. Then she set the basin beside him and waited. Dawn pinkened lattice windows when Crescent's eyes cracked open. They focused with effort, settling on her. "You," he rasped. "The night is dark," she whispered. "And full of terrors," he finished, tears welling, not of awe but of plain gratitude. He gripped her wrist with surprising strength. "Thank you." She pressed a finger to his lips. "Rest. The Lord still has need of his maester." When she left, the solar sunlight sheeted the corridor floors. Davos touched her arm. "You saved him. I misjudged you. Judge men by the fires they tend, not the words they mouth," she said, and walked away. She felt his gaze linger. Trust, spun like spider silk, anchored at last. But she had trespassed upon tangled oaths. Saving a life owed death elsewhere. The faceless god balanced scales with relentless grace. Down in the secure hollow beneath her floor, the glass rod slept, now leached of a drop of her own blood. She wondered whether that blood would sing when the rod next woke, whether it had already begun to change. Competing whispers twined in her skull. Deliver it to Braavos. Wield it for Stannis. Keep it for Melisandre. If that name still belonged to her. Alone. 3 masters spoke. She could obey none without betraying 2. At vespers, she lit a candle in the chapel. Flame guttered, curving inward as though sucked by hidden breath. In its heart she thought she glimpsed the eyeless dragon again. Vaster, fiercer. Faces erupted around it. Some she recognized from Dragonstone's court, others from half-remembered Braavosi alleyways. One face, however, froze her. Her own, but skin flayed. Bone smoldering. Eyes ablaze. The candle snuffed itself, plunging the chapel into darkness. She tasted ash and salt. Decision loomed like coming storm. The island too felt it. Waves smashed harder. Gulls screamed overhead, and dragons of stone scattered spray into the bleak sky as if they sensed hearts beating inside them at last. Somewhere underfoot Stannis marched, cataloging dwindling rations. Somewhere Lady Celis lobbied for burning statues. Somewhere Davos worried wounds that never heal. And below them all, deep under basalt, in a chamber sealed to gods and men, a fluted glass rod pulsed softly, echoing her heartbeat in perfect, perilous time. Okay, ah. The days that followed wove themselves into a braid of candlelit hours and sleepless gloaming. Winds beat Dragonstone's parapets so fiercely that even seasoned sentries flinched, telling half-joking tales of angry revenants circling the island. Lysa, Melisandre beneath her 1,000 veils, Diviara to Braavosi ghosts, never truly nameless, moved like an ember through these corridors, glowing yet never consumed. If any kept close account, they would see she drifted wherever locks were old or hinges unused. leaving faint reagents smeared beneath sconces, chalk sigils small as nail clippings on lintels, and questions planted like seeds in a dozen uneasy minds. But no one cared to reckon her steps too carefully. Hunger gnawed louder than suspicion. Siege rumors spoke over every other concern. Stannis banners, black stag in fiery heart, cracked against skies that could not decide between rain or the lingering ash of dragon-made mountains. More men trickled to Dragonstone each tide. Scarred sellswards from Mire who claimed to worship the Red God. Stormlanders with mud still caked behind their knees. Even 2 silver-hair sisters with limping cavalry mounts pledged for vengeance. Each arrival offered a shard of the world outside, and each carried rumors of the Reach fleets swelling like green tides around the gullet. Supplies dwindled in lockstep with morale, but Stannis met every ill report with the same granite stare. Ordering bolts counted, barrels of brined eel recorked tighter, and prayers left to her. It was on a night of knives of rain that opportunity arrived in the form of Lady Celis Florent. The queen's thin shoulders were stiff as drawn bowstrings when she entered the priestess's cell without knocking. 2 guards hovering uncertainly at the threshold. They bore a canvas-wrapped bundle thickly crusted in old pitch. Celis's eyes shone fever-bright in lamplight. "The king found this in a sealed vault below the rookery," she said, voice brittle from rehearsed restraint. "The maester claims it is Valyrian, but he has no skill in rites. The king bids you read its flame." From the bundle emerged a disc of black metal the size of a platter, chased with deep spirals swirling toward a hollow center. Half-stamped runes circled the outer edge, their curves sharpened like serpent fangs. Merely looking upon it made the ruby at Melisandre's throat throb. She brushed 2 fingers over the surface, registering the faint vibration of sleeping heat. Something inside the black metal longed to waken and sing. "I will need quiet," she whispered. "Candles, incense of my choosing, and no watchers." Celestia inclined her head. The 2 guards set the disc upon the low table, saluted, withdrew. Once they had gone, the queen's mask cracked. Worry and yearning commingled upon her narrow face. Does it hold augury?" she asked, almost childlike. "It holds possibility," the priestess said, guiding Celis gently toward the door. "Possibility must sometimes lie alone to hatch." When the bolt slid home, Melisandre let her shoulders sag. Her gaze flicked to the floorboard concealing the glass rod. Now 2 Valyrian relics nested in her chamber, like mismatched hatchlings from the same dread clutch. She crouched beside the platter, running a thumb around the rim. Metal pricked flesh, released a single red bead that rolled into the spiral's center. The disc drank it, surface rippling minutely before stilling once more. No smoke, no glow, yet she sensed a second heartbeat join her own. Faint, arrhythmic, testing. She breathed slow, coaxing calm, and assembled the tools she would need for the reading, though in truth she intended far more than divination. She began with salt, coarse crystals poured into a circle around the table, an anchor of mundane earth to ground whatever might wake. Next, she draped the platter in gauze, soaked with myrrh, letting fragrant smoke saturate every groove. She knelt, palms hovering over the relic but not touching. Softly, in the dialect Bravazi fishwives used for bargaining with storm spirits, she sang a lullaby of lure and threshold. The ruby pulsed. Tiny sparks danced between her spread fingers and the black metal. She felt currents, invisible yet strong as rope, tug at her pulse first, then at the deeper sonorities of her bones. The disc was not inert. It was a lung-holding breath for centuries, now offered a sliver of air. But any breath granted must be measured, lest it exhale catastrophe. She retrieved the glass rod. Its hollow belly still held shadow liquid, now curling in sluggish spirals, as though aware of its forged kin nearby. Carefully, she unstoppered it. No scent escaped, only a hush, like applause cut short. Sliding the tip into the platter's hollow, she tipped, letting a single shimmering drop fall. The liquid struck metal with a sound like a bell heard underwater. The black spirals flared red at every rune. Glyphs glowed, twisting as though melting and reforming in new configurations. Melisandre's teeth rattled in her skull. The salt circle hissed, grains popping into bitter sparks. Threads of wind coiled up from floorboards despite shuttered windows. Her cloak lifted from her shoulders, pressed by unseen currents swirling inward toward the plate. Visions hammered her, disjointed at first. The painted table melting into volcanic slag. Shireen Baratheon smiling through peeling stone skin. A faceless figure stepped forth from living flame wearing Stannis' features flayed thin. She fought to steady her mind. The many-faced god had trained her to ride such torrents, yet the red god demanded surrender to the wave. Between mastery and abandon lay Razor's Edge. There she balanced. The disk's center bubbled. Molten droplets pulled upward. Not down, congealing into a shape half glass, half metal. An obsidian black egg no bigger than a child's fist, veined crimson. She reached out, not with flesh but with will. Heat exploded across her senses. She felt lungs burning, eyes scorching. She felt a body stripped of faces all at once, naked to raw existence. Names that had clung to her skin fell away, melting like tallow in a furnace. Beneath them all a core remained, unspeakable, unfaced, but hers. For a heartbeat that core met the nascent egg's fiery mind. Something passed between. Recognition and then hunger. Boundless, unformed. She broke the link with a gasp. Blood dripped from her nose. White flecks danced in her sight. The relic lay still, crimson glow fading. The egg now solid, dull. Metal cooled fast enough to sear the air with iron stench. She wiped blood with her sleeve, chest heaving. The ruby at her throat blazed. A webwork of hairline fractures cracked its surface. She unclasped the pendant, let it clatter to the table's edge, still pulsing but dimming quickly. Spent lantern. She took measured breaths. An hour might have passed, or a minute. Rain hammered shutters like siege drums. Somewhere above, bells tolled 3 times. Signal of a ship's silhouette sighted by watchful eyes. She wrapped egg and plate in the smoke-soaked gauze, layered both beneath fresh canvas, and hid the bundle under her straw pallet. A lesser spy might still see nothing but a priestess collapsed in prayer. She fetched water to sluice blood from her face, combed red hair into semblance of order, donned fresh robe and left her cell. She went first to the rookery. Master Pycelle's ravens like dates soaked in wine. Maester Cressen's ravens like sunflower seeds. But the black wing from Bravos perched untroubled in its nook, head tilted. She unrolled a strip of parchment, wrote precisely in cipher. False coin forged. Dragon's breath reeds tremble. Await second mask dot. She tied the note. Sent the bird into the roaring dark. It vanished like ink into tide. The kindly man would read the words, weigh them. Perhaps dispatch guidance. Though guidance often came in the form of silence, an invitation to choose her own doorway. Descending from the rookery, she encountered Davos Seaworth, striding along the covered bridge. Storm lantern in one hand, he looked drawn, worry grooved around his mouth. One of Lord Redwing's cogs struck a reef off Massey's hook, he said by way of greeting. Wreckage drifting north. Could be salvage. Salvage is life, she answered. His eyes narrowed. He studied her face with a careful gentleness that reminded her of braziers banked low to make coals last through night. Maester Cressen says you have been keeping demanding hours. The night is a forge, she replied. He kept step beside her toward the stair. A forge may harden steel or shatter it. These men look to you for hope. Leave none empty. She almost smiled. You fear I spend my store of miracles. I fear miracles bought dear, he said simply, and let her pass. Outside, on rain-slicked battlements, she breathed sea salt and tar, and felt the relic pulse under her cell far below. Miracles indeed demanded coin. Face, blood, name. On either side, the gods vied for her payment. She reported to Stannis in the strategy chamber at dawn. Damp from the storm, sailors crowded behind him. Plain planks of the painted table were beaded with salt droplets. Stannis' fatigue was profound enough that he permitted 3 leeches to cling to his forearm. Maester Cresson coaxing them to feed in hopes of warding ague. The king waved her forward. "The disc," he demanded without preamble. She described what the flame showed, in broad truth painted over deeper secrets. "It is a vessel," she explained. "Within sleeps a fiery heart that must be nursed slowly to waking. Rush, and it devours us. Guide, and it will grant a weapon of flame to carve through night." Norn. Stannis eyed her, skeptical yet desperate. "How long?" "Longer than hunger would allow," she admitted. "But sooner than the Reach's next harvest." That calculus he understood. He dismissed his retinue save Davos, then spoke low. "If you wield this weapon, will it burn ships?" She met his gaze with deliberate stillness. "It burns lies first, then ships, then those who speak betrayal. Point it true, my lord, or it will find its own mark." He scowled, not at warning but at recognition of himself in it. "Make ready whatever rites you require. I will see these lies char." Davos cleared his throat. "What of the men, sire? They need bread before visions." "Bread will come with victory," Stannis muttered. Yet his eyes slid to Davos, conceding silent debate. Melisandre excused herself. She would need reagents and time to coax the egg awake. Ground dragonglass, blood of a king. Stannis could supply his own veins. Wine warmed over volcanic vents. Prayers in tongues older than Valyria. She returned to her cell but paused at the threshold. The door stood ajar, latch splintered. Inside, straw scattered. Pallet overturned. The bundle of relics gone. Ice knifed her spine. She stepped across shards of pottery, crouched where canvas once lay. Footprints in soot traced toward the servants' passage. Whoever came knew what they stole. Celise? Cresson? A sellsword on order from some Braavosi rival? Or a brother of the Faceless guild, sent to clip an apprentice's ambition? She slid obsidian dagger from boot and pressed fingers to floor. Still warm, from more than lingering storm chill. The thief had minutes lead at most. She hurried sideways through a lesser corridor, avoiding main stairs where guards might bar her path. Cobwebbed arches opened into the kitchen yard, smelling of wet ash and onion peel. Carts stood loaded with meager flour sacks destined for sentry posts. No sign. She slowed, listening. The rush of rain masked softer footfalls, but not wholly. A scuff behind the smokehouse. She sprang, blade ready. A slim figure in drab gray jerked up from behind a crate, clutching the canvas-wrapped bundle. Shireen Baratheon's sallow face, half hidden by lank hair, gaped back at her. The princess trembled, though in her eyes glinted defiance. "You said secrets hunger for flame," she blurted. "Father hungers for victory. I thought if I brought it to him it would help." Rain plastered dress to her legs. Some child's loyalty disguised as bravery had driven her to steal what no adult dared approach. Melisandre's heart stuttered. She recalled the vision of the girl smiling through cracking stone flesh. Prophecy knitted threads around them even now. "Bring it, then," Melisandre said gently, sheathing blade. She reached, hands open. Shireen held on a second longer, as though weighing trust, then surrendered the heavy bundle. Canvas edges were dark with water, and something else. A small tear where crimson seeped, blood drawn by the relic's hungry lip. "Did it hurt you?" the priestess asked softly. Shireen shook her head. "Only a little, like a pinch." She lifted a bandaged hand. Blood soaked through ragged cloth. Grayscale scars puckered her cheek and neck, but the wound at her palm oozed fresh and frightening. Melisandre's mind raced. Blood of the king's line had touched the egg. That might accelerate awakening in ways she could neither fully read nor halt. She swallowed. "You mustn't speak of this," she told the girl. Secrets shape themselves in silence. She crouched to rewrap Shireen's hand properly with linen ripped from her sleeve. "Tell your father you slipped in the yard, nothing more." Shireen's eyes brimmed. "Will the fire save us, my lady?" "It may," Melisandre whispered, "if we heed every spark." She watched the girl hurry away through rain. Behind her steps ghosted Maester Cresson, lips thin with disapproval. He had witnessed enough to understand something illicit transpired. Melisandre straightened, bracing for scold. But the maester's voice came weary, not accusatory. "Children should not bleed for crowns," he murmured. "Without children," she answered, "crowns soon rust. Blood is the forge of every realm." Cressen's shoulders sagged. "Then may the Seven shield her, for your forge burns merciless hot." He limped off before she could offer retort. Back within her cell, she laid the bundle open. The disc no longer vibrated. The egg sat warm, veins now pulsing faint orange. She held it to lamplight. Inside, a glow swirled like embers in jarred smoke. Shireen's blood had indeed breached the shell, feeding it. Already a thin hairline fracture spiraled upward. This thing would not wait leisurely for rites. It had tasted royal blood and yearned for more. Swift calculation spun out. If she presented the artifact half-awakened to Stannis, he might thrust soldiers into altars at her command. Khaleesi would urge grand offerings. Unlikely she would spare her own daughter if prophecy hinted at greater triumph. The many-faced god accepted all deaths, but Melisandre, whatever name she wore, felt unease at delivering Shireen to flame. The girl's innocence mirrored something she had long sacrificed. The earliest face she barely remembered. A kindness kept in shadow. She hid the relic anew and fetched writing kit. Another raven message, egg quickening. Crown seed in peril. Counsel needed. But as Quill hovered, she stayed her hand. The kindly man would instruct retrieval to Bravos, or worse, command her to consign Dragonstone to silence. That path severed all ties here, forfeiting the grand vision glimpsed in fire. Dragons of stone given breath, kingdoms remade. The priestess tasted ambition, bitter as pine resin. She folded parchment blank, returned Quill. Some choices must root in self alone. That eve she called upon Stannis in his private audience chamber, bringing only her sharpened certainty. The king sat by a narrow hearth, Lady Khaleesi at his side. Davos a respectful shadow near door. Storm lamps rattled. She met Stannis's uncompromising gaze. "The weapon stirs," she said. "I will need blood of dragon stock to temper it. Your blood, my lord, or none other." He grunted, brusque acceptance. Davos shifted, wary. Khaleesi pressed hands together in rapture. "And the child?" she asked, voice tremulous. "Royal blood flows purest in our daughter." Melisandre's stomach nodded. She schooled her face. "Unnecessary," she lied. "The king's will suffices." She watched Stannis, hoping iron in his character would resist the queen's zealotry. He nodded once. Khaleesi exhaled disappointment. Davos met the priestess's eyes. Gratitude flickered, though he masked it quickly. They followed her to a chamber deep near the volcanic vents, where heat roared like caged dragons. There she set the disc upon an anvil-shaped altar, positioned the egg in its heart, and drew a blade of dragonglass. She washed it in wine, reciting Valyrian invocations. Stannis bared forearm, offered wrist without flinch. She sliced clean, crimson ribbon, spilling into a crystal basin. The egg trembled as the blood was poured over it, each drop sizzling into vapor before being absorbed. Veins flashed scarlet, lightning beneath obsidian. A roar, felt more than heard, shuddered the walls, extinguished torches. In that blind instant, Melisandre saw a vision clear as dawn. A shadow thing shaped like a wyvern, rising from Dragonstone cliffs, wingspan wide enough to eclipse the moon. But when it opened its maw, no fire came. Only stillness so perfect it stilled hearts where it fell. Flames rekindled. The egg glowed molten, shell sloughing in rivulets across the disk. From molten core jutted a shard of bone? Stone? It reared upward, curving to a talon-bladed spearhead. Then fissures traced its length, bleeding red light. The relic began to cool, solidifying into a weapon as alien as Starmetal, a spear or scepter, ridged with draconic thorns, tip honed to impossible sharpness. It lay across the platter, steaming. Stannis stepped forward, hand half lifted. "Touch not yet," she warned. "It remembers the forge." He obeyed, though every sinew quivered with want. Davos stared, awe and dread twinned on his weather-lined face. Khaleesi whispered prayers. tears on cheeks. Melisandre damped the stirrings of triumph within. The weapon's birth cost little blood tonight, but prophecy seldom delivered such bargains twice. And she sensed ambition in the thing itself. No inert blade, but an ember of living will groan around the hollow the rod had carried. It had tasted royal essence. It would crave more. They cloaked the weapon in heavy oiled cloth, locked it within the vault adjoining the painted table. Stannis stationed 20 men to guard, each sworn by name, each hand picked by Dragonstone. Still, Melisandre knew. Stone cannot bar a flame that burns within. Days cooled to a brittle expectancy. Scouts brought word of Lord Redwayne's main fleet becalmed beyond Massey's Hook, bottled by storms. Stannis saw in it his opening. He gave orders to muster every ship, old Dromons, galleys half worm-eaten, to dash south and raid, capturing wine and grain. Melisandre counseled caution. The weapon was not yet fully readied. But Stannis' will, once set, bent to none. He left her the keep with skeleton garrison and stern decree. Guard Dragonstone. Safeguard the weapon. Kindle hope. She watched sails vanish into morning haze. Hours later, ravens gurgled overhead, troubled by sea currents that smelled of lightning. She stood on wind-scoured parapet, feeling tug of fate. Beneath her feet the castle thrummed. She descended to the vault. 2 guards lay at threshold, throats slit, expressions still caught in fleeting sleep. Candle sconces guttered cold. The iron-banded door hung ajar. Inside, the platter sat empty, dark, the weapon gone. A dribble of fresh blood marked the floor. Fat drops leading inward, then disappearing where stone blocks drank them. She knelt, brushing 2 fingers across one drop. Warm still. Whoever stole the spear walked these halls even now, blade-thirsting. Dread churned. Yet beneath it, a flicker of liberation. The thing had chosen its bearer, perhaps. But not her, unless this too was part of design beyond her foretelling. She collected dragonglass dagger, a coil of wire, a thin phial of smoke oil. Her red cloak flowed after her down spine-tight passages. Somewhere distant, bells clanged in irregular alarm. Someone had found the corpses. Shadows cavorted in torchlight, their edges knife-keen in her vision. She slid through an archway and entered the Godswood courtyard at Castle's heart. There, under storm-black sky, a silhouette knelt at the weirwood stump, weapon held across knees. Maester Cresson, robe sodden, white hair plastered to temples. The spear seemed too heavy for his frail arms, yet he stroked its haft like a parent comforting fevered babe. The stump's bleached trunk bore a raw streak of fresh sap, where blade scraped bark. Black blood mingled with white. Cresson's eyes lifted to hers, pleading, lucid, resigned. "I thought to unmake it," he croaked. "Before your queen feeds it more innocence, but it speaks. It wants," he faltered, sway-backed. The spear's ridges had sliced his palms, blood streaked down shaft, veins of living crimson. "Set it down," she urged. "Its will is not yours." He shook his head. "Nor yours, nor Stannis. It is hunger, forged. Hunger endures longer than faith." Lightning forked above, revealing tears on his lined cheeks. He lifted the spear, tipped toward his chest. "Fire should end with ashes," he whispered. She lunged. Wind ripped hood from her hair. But the maester's strength surprised. He drove the tip inward before she reached him. A wet crunch. Bone parted like parchment. The relic hissed, devouring blood in silent frenzy. Cresson sagged forward, mouth ajar, yet eyes already distant. The spear drank until no more flowed, then pulsed once, dull red, turning bright. Melisandre eased the corpse aside, pried fingers from haft. The weapon felt alive, surface warm, pulse sensing to her own. In its glow, she sensed Maester's final thoughts. Fear for Shireen, love for Stannis, regret heavy as chains, absorbed, digested. Her stomach churned. Shouts echoed. Lanterns bobbed beyond hedgerows. Guards arriving. Quickly she wrapped the spear in cloak, concealing its glow. Rain intensified, washing away blood from stump. When soldiers burst into courtyard, they found Priestess kneeling over fallen Maester, hands stained red. Captain Lucos fell barked orders, swords raised. She rose slowly. He tried to nip poison rose, she said, voice iron. But thorns were keen. Bear him gently. Fell-eyed weapon-shaped bundle, but sensing its peril deferred to her. They carried Crescen's body toward Septi for rites. She walked beside, cloak-wrapped burden cradled against ribs, every step vibrating with the relic's restless hunger. Her own hunger matched it now. Hunger for resolution. She had chosen no master but necessity. The spear had fed on death and could feed again. If left unchecked, it would devour whoever next held it. Perhaps Shireen, perhaps whole armies. If guided, maybe it could strike true. That night, she summoned Davos alone to chamber. She threw cloak aside, spear's glow gilded walls. Maester Crescen is dead, she told him. The weapon claimed his life. It will claim others unless we master it. Nay. Davos stared horrified. That thing is cursed. I can feel it from here. Curses are but songs sung backward, she replied. We may yet turn the melody. He shook his head. Stannis must judge. Stannis must not return to find his daughter marked by flame, she said, voice soft steel. Help me. There is a forge deep beneath the Dragonmont where Valyrian stone meets fire. Together we temper its will or we break it. Conflicted storm played across his features. At last, honor overrode fear. He inclined his head once. Show the way. They descended stairs seldom trod, passing vents that exhaled dragon breath heat. At corridors, end an iron gate barred path. Runes glimmered faint. She pressed spear tip to lock. Metal sighed, parted like butter. Beyond lay a cavern vast, ceiling lost to shadows, magma pooling in ruby lakes. Obsidian columns sprouted like claws. In the gloom, echoes of ancient sorceries whispered, half comprehensible. They advanced to a dais of fused glass. Melisandre planted spear upright in its socket. Magma's glow climbed ridges, the weapon quickening. She began chant, parts Volantine, parts Bravosi, fragments of Rollerlor's vigil, and even, daringly, a plea from the Father of Waters. She poured memory into words. Faces she had worn, souls she had guided to death's gentle hall. Each offered as barter. Weapons hunger for hers. The spear vibrated, then screamed. High metal keen that drove Davos to his knees. She continued, voice now raw. Hunger must bend, she intoned, to purpose greater than itself. Lightning cracked across cavern roof. No storm within earth, yet electricity leapt between basalt teeth. The spear's glow flared, then wavered, color shifting from blood red to deep gold, as if dawn ignited inside. Ridge thorns retracted slightly. Pulse slowed. She thrust both hands upon shaft. Heat flensed skin, but she held. Davos rose, placed his lone hand atop hers, lending strength. For a moment they stood so, two souls anchoring a fledgling star. The spear stilled. Glow settled into steady amber. She released breath. Pain laced her palms. Skin blistered. Davos' beard singed, eyes watering. But he managed a crooked grin. Did we win? We shaped, she answered, voice hoarse. Time will judge victory. They doused hands in cooling trough, then wrapped weapon in Kirin hide, dampened with brine, binding its heat. As they ascended toward daylight, Melisandre felt the spear's heartbeat matching theirs. Calmer, yet vigilant. She thought of Stannis at sea, of fleets becalmed, of red wine helmsmen scanning storm horizon unaware. A golden dawn approached in shape of draconic spear. And she thought of Shireen's shy hope, flickering like candle that feared its own melt. Someday soon she must decide whether to guard that flame or offer it. Back on ramparts, sun-edged clouds, rain easing. Raven silhouettes wheeled overhead. One alighted on crenellation, a different bird, bearing scrap of sea-damp parchment. She stroked its neck, took the message. 4 Bravosi glyphs only, ink running. Choose, face or flame. She crushed parchment in fist. Face, flame, mercy, ambition. Many-faced god, Lord of Light. Two masters, always. Yet the spear in her grasp hummed a new note. Third choice, born of their fusion. She lifted her eyes to horizon where Stannis' sails would return laden with captured grain, or dashed as kindling on tempest's whim. Either way the spear awaited. So did the girl, the king's pawn and key. So did vaults of secrets deeper yet. She inhaled, exhaled, felt skin tighten across cracked palms. Smelled forge smoke still lingering in hair. A new face formed behind her eyes, one she might soon wear. Not priestess, not assassin, but steward of a weapon conceived in stolen blood and tempered by mingled wills. The weave of the world trembled where that face would step. In the courtyard below, quartermasters shouted, ordering grain wagons readied for hungry mouths. Cooks banged kettles. Children chased half-tamed goats through puddles. Laughter bright against stone gloom. Life persisted. Indifferent to prophecy's gears grinding overhead. She closed fingers over spear haft within cloak. Amber pulse glimmered between gaps in binding. A heartbeat answered by her own. The gods might demand their tithes, but for now she walked the wall carrying dawn in secret, resolved that when choice pressed, she would be the voice, not the echo. And if face and flame must one day war, she would stand where their fires crossed and forge from their clashing sparks a story none had dared script. A story that, like the weapon she cradled, belonged to no creed but the will that birthed it. Aishe. Wind clawed the dragon mont like some restless, half-starved wyvern, rattling slate tiles atop every tower and sending gulls screaming out over the iron sea. In murk-washed dawnlight, Melisandre watched Stannis' battered fleet return in ragged line abreast. Masts shorn, sails scorched where storm fires had seared through hemp. Yet each ship rode lower than it had departed, holds sagging with plundered casks of wine and sacks of barley and porridge oats stolen from red wine cogs. Victory by attrition, Stannis would call it. Victory by insolence, Lord Alistair Florent might sneer. She wondered how history would carve these hours once blood dried hard upon the decks. Waves licked the quay, painting damp veins across volcanic rock. Ropes flew. Davos Seaworth leapt ashore first, his lone hand slick with tar, missing fingers thumping the last grinless slap of rigging against bulwark. He hailed her with a curt nod that said relief, fatigue, unspoken worries twined too tight for words. Behind him, sailors unloaded barrels, navigated planks, slick with brine and sweat. Some men staggered beneath the weight of green fruit still dangling from broken branches. Proof they had raided orchards along even coasts. The orchards would wither by frost come moon's turn. Hunger had no patience for tomorrow. Stannis descended next. Salt wept from his beard. A half-healed cut raked his cheek like a crimson slash of defiance. He strode past Salute without acknowledging. The weight of command rode him heavier than the iron gorget around his neck. Melisandre stepped forward, spear hidden beneath layers of wool draped like a stag's pelt over her arms. The relic pulsed faint through cloth, heartbeat echoing hers. "The sea favored you, my lord," she said. Stannis snorted. The sea had no favor. Only a storm that wrecked faster ships than ours. We took what dregs we could before Tyrell fire galleys arrived. He glanced at the bundles in her arms. "Is that the weapon?" "It is tempered," she replied. "It must be sharpened anew in a single moment of true purpose. Until then it waits." Stannis' eyes flicked past her to dock hands bent double under grain. "Purpose arrives tonight. Tyrell outriders chase our flank. Half my rearguard limps on splintered masts. If they strike after dusk, Dragonstone falls." She dipped her head. "Dawn will not favor them." Salesis swept down the ramp, skirts plastered to calves, hair net metallic as chain. "The Lord of Light foretold triumph," she declared. "Your flame will burn them away." Davos' eyes darted from queen to priestess. "Ships need sails patched and hulls tarred before fate writes any lines. Give us daylight to mend." Stannis' frown deepened, but he waved assent. "Do what you can. Tonight, the gullet will glow with lanterns." They parted. Davos herded exhausted crews toward dry docks. Stannis clattered up toward the painted table, dogged by advisors. Faceless remained, gaze fastened on the shrouded spear, reverence mingling with suspicion. "You have hidden what the night blessed," she whispered. "I guard what still hungers," Melisandre answered. Faceless's hands twitched. Perhaps she remembered the hunger in herself that wanted a blaze of sacrifice. Then she turned away, cloak snapping like sailcloth, leaving the priestess to her chosen secrets. She carried the spear into the belly of the keep, along hallways buzzing with the stink of wet wool, tallow smoke, human tension. In a defunct granary she found Shireen sitting atop a cask, reading aloud from a crumbling bestiary to Patchface, the fool. The girl's bandaged hand rested upon her lap. When Melisandre entered, Patchface clapped fish-scale bells, crooning nonsense. Shireen closed the book, shy smile flickering. "I hoped you returned," the child said. "Father said you would light the sky." "The sky carries many lights," Melisandre replied. She knelt, voice low. "Do you trust me?" Yes. "Then here, if torches blaze atop island peaks tonight, you are to follow Sir Davos to a hidden door beyond the rookery. Say nothing. You must leave Dragonstone until I call you back." The priestess pressed a coin of obsidian into Shireen's good palm, smoothing her fingers shut. "Show this to no one." Patchface rocked, bells tinkling discord. "Under the sea, the shadows dance with stone," he sang. Melisandre's rubulous throat tightened. Shadows dance everywhere. She left them. The spear throbbed harder, the nearer it approached vents that exhaled dragon breath through fissures. The courtyard bustled. Smiths hammered nails, carpenters fit new masts. Cries of pain rose where injured sailors were stitched by candlelight. All these hearts feeding the relic, she thought. It drank tension, fear, hope alike. Behind stables she found a man waiting. Lean, mild-bearded, wearing the garb of a Pentoshi factor. But when he lifted face, it was the kindly man's apprentice, now wearing someone else's eyebrows, lips, cheeks. She recognized him by how he carried stillness, like a grave turned sideways. "Jaqen," she breathed, using the first name he once borrowed from Loreth. "You came." "A girl sends greetings," he said, voice soft as sweetened milk. "She once walked the halls of black and white beside you. The house wonders. Will you deliver what was promised?" She stroked the spear's wrappings. "My path forked. The weapon obeys no creed. I can't hand it over. Then the house will take payment another way. A name, perhaps. Or a face." His eyes gleamed. One face already lost. The old maester's. Balance tilts. She felt the scales weight. "I will name one, if need arises. But not Shireen." Jaqen tilted head. "The daughter of the stag is not ours to claim, unless coin desires her. Yet burning children is ill commerce. Yet Stannis Queen would. That I cannot allow. Then a girl must act before night devours day." He stepped closer, palm up. "Place the spear in Braavosi hands, and we vanish. Fire will fade, debts wiped clean. New knee." She tightened arms around cloth. "If you carry it to Braavos, they will harness its hunger, breed new wars." He smiled, rueful. "And what will the Lord of Light do with it? Ignite heavens? Roast kings? I had planned to break the cycle, but I need time. Time is coin few possess." He murmured, then withdrew a slender stiletto shaped like morning tear. "Should your need change, whisper to the wind. A man will hear." He melted into stalls. Horses whickered uneasily as if sensing a ghost passing. Melisandre exhaled shakily. The relic's pulse quickened, tasting conflict. She hurried toward the subterranean forge and stowed spear within the secret socket beneath fused glass dais, locking runic gate behind her. Then she sought Davos, found him on the half-repaired deck of Black Betha, overseeing crews stitching sails. "Storms approach," she told him. "Not merely Tyrell's sails, other storms. Watch for a Pentoshi factor in plain garb. If he boards Dragonstone again, bar him. He shadows murder." Davos' brow furrowed. "If murder knocks, I'll bar with steel. But many strangers pass as allies now." "Menace." then trust no new face. Night bled across the world like ink tipped from a giant's quill. Fires dotted the inner ward, but most torches were damped to preserve oil. Up on ramparts, archers watched distant lantern clusters bob. The Tyrell outriders anchoring offshore. Clouds clotted moon, hiding all but thin blade of light. Melisandre stood on the windwalk, hair thrashing, and whispered tongue-twisting syllables, coaxing the breezes into a single spiral. The relic below answered, glow seeping through vents, invisible to ordinary eyes. Cannon thump of catapults launching flaming pots shattered quiet. The Tyrell flagship Castamir's song hurled first volley, incendiary barrels trailing sparks. Stannis' shore catapults retorted, stones whistling. The night exploded with orange arcs. Melisandre descended, footsteps sure despite tremor and floor. She reached vault, found spear glowing bright through cracks in glass stace. She grasped haft. Heat surged, pain searing new blisters across palms. The spear's wool flooded her thoughts, offering visions. Stone dragons tearing loose from walls, shaking scale-like slabs, spitting white flame down upon invading fleet. She saw Tyrell decks catching ghost fire that seared flesh yet left wood intact. A merciful cruelty reversed. She saw Stannis crowned in radiance, realm bowed. But deeper vision whispered other path. Spear hurled into black waters deep. Hunger extinguished by endless brine. Shireen grown to queen of taught compassion. Faceless gods, satisfied that death came without spectacle. Between them lay third door. Her alone, guiding weapon to carve but not consume, forging new faith freed from Aelor's tyranny, from many-faced bargaining. Face and flame fused. She lifted weapon, stalked upward. Stone corridor glared amber around her. Guards parted, awestruck. Selisa, upon dais near gatehouse, saw her and fell to knees, tears carving soot lines. Melisandre did not slow. Stannis, visor uplifted, sword lightbringer raised, turned as she emerged onto main parapet. Flaming pots rained above, one smashing far side of yard, spraying oily blaze. He saw the spear hallowing her silhouette, and for first time wonder broke his iron mask. "Is it ready?" "It awaits your command," she replied. "But heed, it slays truth first, then lies. What truth do you offer?" "My right to crown." She stepped closer until tip hovered before breastplate edge. "And the truth of your daughter's life?" Stannis flinched, but answered softly, "She is my heart." Queen Selisa gasped protest below. Melisandre saw Davos watching from the shadows. Hope flickering. She nodded once. "Then let us defend your heart." She swung spear outward toward sea. Men ducked as molten light coiled along ridges, gathering at tip. She spoke a word neither Valyrian nor Braavosi. It came from deeper root, syllables shaped by hunger itself. The spear screamed. A beam of golden fire ripped sky, bathing fleet in sunburst. Where flame touched water, steam roared. Where it brushed sails, cloth ignited in white silence. Yet when glare faded, all wood remained unscathed. Only pitch caulking and rope burned, leaving ships still afloat but blind, helmless, drifting. Crude men stumbled, armor smoking yet skin spared. It was terror without massacre. Tyrell captains, believing sorcery undone them, hauled anchors, retreated before wind revived. Their lanterns dwindled to pinpoints and vanished behind curtain of sulfur fog. Dragonstone erupted in cheers. Selisa led ecstatic chant to R'hllor. Stannis exhaled one immense sigh. Melisandre lowered spear, trembling. Hunger in relic subsided, sated by fear harvested, rather than blood. She turned to Davos, lips parched. "Ready, Shireen," she mouthed. He nodded, slipping away. Yet victory tasted ash-tinged. She sensed Jaqen somewhere unseen, measuring balance. One death owed. Crescent moon slid between clouds, silvering courtyard. She descended to Queen's Solar where Selise already summoned her, eager to plan a blazing ritual thanksgiving. Candlelight jittered off polished steel icons. "The Lord of Light shone brightest tonight," Selisa cried, eyes feverish. Ye demands offering. The blood of our enemies, or? Her gaze drifted to cradle where Shireen once slept. Purity forged by flame. Your daughter is spared, Melisandre said. The god accepted fear in lieu of flesh. Salisa's lips twisted. Fear fades. Blood endures. Prophecy speaks of king's blood waking stone dragons. Nan? Prophecy misread birth's monsters. Allow triumph to stand unsullied tonight. Bensimu. The queen's expression curdled, suspicion forming. Why protect the girl so fiercely? Is she your pawn? Her heart steadies the spear. Salisa advanced, voice razor thin. If she steadies it, her blood could control it. Before rage bloomed into action, footsteps thundered in hall. Davos appearing with Shireen cloaked in rough spun, carrying travel sack. Guards rushed behind. Melisandre pivoted, extending spear crosswise, barring doorway. By king's leave, the princess sails for safety. Queen shrieked, never. She lunged but crashed against spear's shaft, repelled by unseen force that flung her backward. She sprawled, sobbing fury. Stannis arrived, drawn by commotion. His gaze traveled from wife to spear to child trembling at Davos' side. What mummer's farce is this? Melisandre lowered spear. Your daughter must leave while zeal grows hot. Not Tyrell blades but our own fear threatens her. I ask safe passage. Salisa clutched Stannis' leg. She would steal Shireen. Stannis looked at Melisandre, brows thunderous. Do you swear child's return? I swear on flame and shadow, Melisandre said quietly. When realm steadies, she comes home. He weighed, jaw muscles knotting. Then he nodded to Davos. Take her to the fishing skiff. Sail for Gulltown, then to Sisterton. Return when I send word. Davos bowed, hustled Shireen down passage. Salisa wailed, but Stannis' hand on hilt froze her. When they vanished, Melisandre met the queen's blazing eyes. The god tests love more than faith, she murmured, then departed with spear. She ascended outer wall. Clouds parted, revealing stars flung like bright bones across black vault. Jaqen peeled from darkness near crenellation. A name then, he asked. I name myself, Melisandre said. For every death owed, I pay with who I was. Jaqen's brows flicked in faintest surprise. A surrendered willingly is rare coin. He extended gloved hand. The house will accept. She placed upon his palm the ruby, shattered into fragments after forging. Take these shards. They hold the woman I no longer am. He closed fingers. A girl is no one, yet now you choose to be someone again. I choose to forge a new creed. This spear will not permit half measures. I know. Her grip tightened on half. Hunger pulsed steady, but tamed. Jaqen bowed. Then a man wishes you twilight between worlds. He pivoted, slipped along battlements, and was gone. Below, small lantern bobbed at cove where Davos' skiff shoved off. Melisandre lifted spear tip, drawing slow circle in air. A filament of golden light shimmered overhead like halo, blessing their voyage. Shireen, from stern, raised hand. The priestess's heart clenched. In that wave she felt weight of cost. Faces dropped behind her like shedded skins. Lysa of Les, Diviara the initiated, Rose of Summer Isles, tomb girl beneath Bravos. Once, perhaps, a child who knelt at a hearth too cold for comfort. Wind freshened. Stannis' men doused watchfires to conserve pitch. Victory chants ebbed into weary murmurs. She walked the parapet until only the spear's faint amber glow lit her path. Stone dragons loomed, mouths agape, yet silent. They had felt the surge of flame earlier and dreamed restless dreams now. Someday they might wake indeed, but not tonight. Not under hunger or prophecy. Under choice, perhaps. She paused before gargoyle shaped like roaring drake, spear point pressed to its basalt teeth. Sleep, she told it. Dream of better masters. Then she descended into Keep's emptier corridors, reached a meditation alcove where once Rhaenys Targaryen sang to her infant dragon eggs. She sank onto cold stone bench. Spear lay across knees, weight tremendous yet strangely tender. She closed eyes, breathing with a relic, melding pulses, smoothing jagged edges inside her mind. She remembered each face she had traded. The charity done, the killings, the escapes, the nights afloat on fractured identity. She saw them align like stars into new constellation, underlying patterns spelled by her own will at last. Not no one, not servant alone. A smith of stories, forging fires yet unimagined. Dawn crawled over waves, bruised violet brightening into rose. Raven rose from tower, wings flashing silver. It circled thrice above Dragonstone, then soared east toward Essos. Whether it carried warning, promise, or threat, she could not tell. She merely watched until silhouette merged with horizon. Behind her, bells tolled celebration of victory. Somewhere, Stannis would pace the painted table, plans already shifting to lift Siege of Storm's End, to cross to Blackwater again. Somewhere, Selyse would nurse wrath and grief in equal measures, her faith seeking new kindling. And on a skiff near Sisterton, a borrowed daughter and a smuggler would sail quiet waters, their hope small but intact. The spears glowed dimmed at dawn, entering slumber like blade sheathed. Melisandre rose, steady p. Her palms bled where blisters burst. Each drop sizzled on stone, leaving tiny onyx seeds. She flexed fingers, unafraid of scars. Zaps echoed. A young page appeared, eyes wide. "My lady, the king commands your presence." She nodded, lifting spear to shoulder. "Tell the king his priestess comes bearing dawn." The boy bowed. Scampered. She crossed threshold into corridor, where first sunlight slanted through arrow slit, carving stripe of gold across floor. She stepped into it. Spear sparkled, hunger nested but quiet. Her shadow stretched before her, long, sharp, winged, yet chainless now, walking beside flame, not beneath it. And as she advanced toward waiting king, she whispered a silent vow that no god, masked or burning, would script the next verse. The choice would belong to the face she kept, the only face she would ever need again.